Hey there, I'm Maggie,
And I'm Kate.
and this is our show, Honestly Though, with Maggie and Kate.
You're listening to season 1, where we're having more of the honest conversations that you won't find in corporate American settings or among polite company.
Every Wednesday for the next 10 weeks, we'll talk openly about common experiences that affect people at work and in life, but aren't usually talked about in business as usual environments.
You won't find a highly polished show in season 1, but we can promise that you're getting the raw and honest perspective of two solopreneurs who outgrew the status quo and are committed to thriving in this next season.
And the most important part is we're not really interested in talking at you. We want to talk with you, so you can join the conversation in the comments or send us a conversation starter for a future episode, and you can find all the ways to get involved in the show notes.
All right, let's get to it.
Today, we are very excited to be talking to you guys about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart right now. And our big overarching question is, will we get in trouble? And this kind of started, me and Kate talk all the time, but I started reading this book that was helping me unpack my limiting beliefs. And I mentioned to Kate how this is one of my big ones, is I always feel like when I share, I'm going to get in trouble. And that naturally is not a great thing for someone who needs to market themselves all the time online. So that's why the conversation kind of came up. And then as we were chatting, we realized that we kind of approach this very differently, although we both feel it internally. So, quick plug in case you guys are curious about the book that I was reading. It is Choose Your Story, Change Your Life by Kindra Hall. Not associated. Just want to give her flowers because it helped me.
So, yeah, I first of all, I haven't read that book, but it sounds incredibly up my alley and like something that I must read. So thank you for sharing that. And I love that you pointed out too that like we both think about the concept of getting in trouble really differently, and we approach how we let that concept impact the way that we show up and market ourselves and our businesses. And so I think that'll be a really interesting conversation because we come at it from such different angles, even though we like both have the same through line there of worrying.
Yeah. Honestly, that's just why I love psychology, is because we could all have the same label or whatever, and it's so different for every single person, even twins.
Totally.
It's the best. So,
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we start then with tell me what trouble means to you when you think about getting in trouble. What are you saying?
yeah, I feel like the the biggest thing that comes to mind is just people aren't going to like me. Like I'm going to be ostracized in some way. There's some kind of social consequence, like maybe getting canceled in today's terms. Like that's for me the trouble. It's not like punishment by I'm not afraid of going to jail. I'm not afraid of, I don't know, being attacked in the streets or having my house bombed or anything. Like it's nothing like physically consequential. It's all psychological for me, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think
What about you?
I would say for me like it's very I think about it really similarly, and but I haven't always. Like I think if we would have been talking this time last year, I would have thought about getting in trouble more as in getting in trouble with the powers that be or with leaders in the business world who don't want me to be successful or whatever. And what I realized over the last year is like no one's actually paying as much attention to me as I think they might be. And so that's been very empowering, and has kind of taken me off the hook in terms of feeling like I'm going to get in trouble in the kind of way that is like meaningfully, like that would like really impact my life or my family's life, like my children's life. And so that's been very empowering. And I think now where I've landed, I'm more similar to you in terms of and not so much worried about like cancel culture. I'm more worried about getting in trouble with the people in my real, like my very close knit circle. Like I can think of like 4 or 5 people where I'm like, oh boy, like every time I'm trying to write something, I'm like, oh, I will get in trouble with that person if I say that. And what I'm realizing though too in going through that and thinking about it out loud is, and not just right now, but like every time I write, is that the same thing is actually true. Like whether you're thinking about like, are you going to get in trouble with like corporate leaders or the government versus are you going to get in trouble with a person in your inner circle, people that don't want to hear what you have to say, like no one is listening to me as much as I think
Yeah.
they and like the people that I'm worried about getting in trouble with, they aren't listening. And that's good and that's empowering too, but that one's taken me more time to really step into fully.
Yeah. I I totally get that. I feel like you bringing up a year ago too, I have to also throw out, like, since I'm not in corporate anymore, I have let go a lot of that, but I used to think anything I said can or will be used against me. I was constantly in fear of losing my job, even though there was nothing to indicate that I would lose my job. Like, it was all just the anxiety in my head, replaying conversations, knowing how things could be twisted because the world is crazy. I spend a lot of time online and my words get twisted all the time. So like
Yeah.
quickly I'll share a story of one time me and my boyfriend were going to Mexico for a wedding and I was like complaining at a happy hour about the price of flights cuz I was like god it's so expensive like blah blah blah. I went home for the next 2 weeks cuz my boss was on vacation for 2 weeks. I was convinced she was going to fire me when she got back because I was complaining about being underpaid and even though that's
Right.
not what happened.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
how I had twisted it where I was like, well, we had 2 new people at the company at that happy hour. They don't know me. They don't know the company. Their first impression of me is complaining about money. That's
Yeah.
gonna fall on my head someday. I was convinced I was gonna get in trouble as if like
Uh-huh.
I didn't even use dollar amounts. Like I literally was so paranoid and that's all just because I had this fear. It had nothing it was not based in a reality like at all.
Yeah. So as you described that feeling, I remember that there were several times in corporate where I felt I know that fear and that waiting and wondering is something coming around the corner, and it never did. Um, and I love your
When
mug.
all
I
the
feel
feedback you get's positive and
yeah.
everybody's, like, happy with you and you're great and, like, everybody always told me how great I was and how I was everybody's favorite, and I'm still like, "I'm
Yes.
next."
Yeah. So, and then I think something else you said too about how so often it's in our heads. Like, yes, it is. Like there are things that I think I am going to get in trouble for, and even as I was just describing it earlier in those few people in my life that are going to, if they are listening, they would say, you are putting words in my mouth. I am not like you are making assumptions about how I will feel about the things that you have to say. I get that all the time. I also talk about myself in terms of like sometimes the things I say are so mean and then people are like, no, they're not. And so like so much of this comes from ourselves and our inner dialogues and the things that we have internalized from things other people say that like just really aren't even
Yeah.
real. So that is another really empowering lesson to learn is that like I am holding myself back. I am often the person who punishes myself the most and
Yeah.
it's not deserving. So yeah.
No, that's super fair, like, as far as, like, what trouble means or who's gonna hold us to whatever standard, I feel like when we're in the moment, we're thinking it's external, but in reality, it's like 95% internal. Like there are people who are going to hold people accountable,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
you were saying earlier, no one's really paying that close attention. So unless you do something so big and so bad,
Yeah.
who's coming after you? Like, actually do anything wrong, even though to you, like I think that's where like our consciences come in, where it's like, oh, this sounds so bad or that was so mean. Like I can't believe
Yeah.
when you said that, it reminded me of this video on Instagram I saw the other day from a therapist that's like, when my client comes in, they're like, "This is gonna sound bad, but" and it's like, "No, it's not, babe. People
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
actually worry about sounding bad don't sound bad." Like, if you have that filter in your head, like, questioning it, you're probably fine.
Yeah. Totally.
Assholes don't ask themselves if they're assholes, like,
Yes. Yeah.
but it's still. you know, that's the curse of being a good person, I guess, is having that little voice to hold us accountable.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's part of what introspection is all about, right? And it show like exactly to your point, it shows that we think critically about the things that we say and that we care a lot about how we're going to be received and the impact of our words. Like for me, it's I'm less concerned now than I was a year ago about how I'm going to be perceived because I've just okay, like I'm used to being perceived all kinds of ways by all different kinds of people. And I've had enough repetition now where I realize that the way I'm perceived often says a lot more about other people than it does about me. And so, it's less about that, but I don't even remember what I was saying now. So I'm just going to go back to my other thought, which was do you listen to Noah Kahan?
No, but I keep seeing everyone talking about his new album. I've never heard this man's name until this album, and it seems like everyone knows him and loves him. Who is
Yeah.
he?
So one of my former managers, her name is Rachel, and she introduced me to Noah Khan a few years ago. His second album just came out a couple days ago. And so I've been listening to it. And there's a song on there called Haircut. He says, "You told me if a lie turned true, a lie it would still be. You ain't a goddamn hero now because you cry on live TV. But at least I got a soul still, even if I'm in a bad place, even if I'm eating fast food, sleeping at my dad's place." And so when I hear that, it reminds me of my own internal dialogue. Sometimes I feel like people think that I'm putting myself on a pedestal. And
Yeah, they're, like,
I
projecting that onto you.
totally, and
Yeah.
when I hear like you ain't a goddamn hero now because you cry on live TV, I hear you ain't a goddamn hero because you cry on LinkedIn. And like, but then I tell myself, okay, but at least I got a soul still. Like at least I'm like a good person. At least I'm standing up for the things I want. And like that whole dynamic there is so um dangerous because when you believe that people are holding you to certain standards or thinking things about you or about your intentions, then you get to a really defensive place of, well, leaning into my soul. Like I didn't let corporate America steal my soul. And it's like, no one is thinking that. And these are the ways that we get ourselves in trouble and project onto others that they're getting us in trouble when we're not. So anyway,
Yeah.
highly metaphorical, but I just was thinking about that song.
No, I like that. I have a question around that for you if you are comfortable, but do you think that sometimes when you go to, like, write a LinkedIn post or even just write on your own and you have that, like I'm gonna call it, like, a whisper 'cause I don't know how loud it is, but, like, something in the back of your head's, like, reminding you, like, "People think you're a hero. People think you're a hero." Does that impact how you show up for better or worse? Like,
Yeah,
do
I
you think
think it holds
sometimes you're louder because you let that amp you up, or do sometimes you hold back because 'cause you're like, "No, I'm not trying to be a hero," or does it just not come into
the
play? That's
second
kinda
one.
where I'm seeing it.
It's always the second one. I
You don't wanna play
always
hero.
I don't want to be perceived as a hero because that is not what it's quite literally not what I want. And I think that
Okay.
the hero mindset comes from, I mean, I worked at a company and we were all about the hero's journey. So the hero's journey is already like a big part of my marketing ethos. So part of it I think comes from there. But the other part of it is that I am someone who relates to others by sharing my own stories. And I don't do that because I'm self-absorbed or self-interested or want everyone to like, look me, pick me, think about me. I do it because it's the best way that I know to help other people realize that they're not alone and to help other people feel things. I think sometimes like we talk about this a lot, like I don't want to make assumptions about
Yeah.
you're feeling this way and you need to blah blah like no like and so for me I use myself as a I'm feeling this way and I did this thing and I'm experiencing the world in this way and I'm struggling with this. And that is the container that I use to relate to others and help others feel like seen and understood and held. But there's a big part of me, a big voice in my head that is like, you're trying to act like a hero. You would just want everyone to look at you. You just are what want attention. You're just whatever. And
So you don't
yeah,
even see hero as a good thing, which is
I
like
don't.
I feel like
Uh,
in the grand scheme of the world, hero is a very positive word, but it seems like your perception is a little more like performative almost. Like, you don't wanna be a hero because I'm thinking also superheroes, but, like, real superheroes do not exist. No one's coming to save the world. So to put that label on you, it's like an unfair expectation on one hand, and then also it's like, do you see me as performative? Like, do you s you know, like, I can kind of feel like both of that would hit me
Yes.
if I were you. That makes sense.
I don't wanna be performative at all. I wanna be real, and also, I believe wholeheartedly in the power of collaboration and community. I
That's
don't
true
just
too. You're
wanna
not a
be just
single
me. I
person.
don't wanna be, like I don't wanna write a book that's gonna, like, whatever. I write so that I can relate and collaborate, and that's why. And so I think for me, yeah, the word hero has, like, a very negative
Yeah,
connotation.
I imagine, like, you holding the megaphone speaking to the group and then passing it to someone else to speak to the group
Uh-huh.
versus a hero is
Right.
just gonna
Yeah.
they're the megaphone holder, no one
Yeah.
else gets to have the megaphone, and you're like, "No, I literally wanna hear from every single person in this circle." Like,
Exactly.
let us
Yeah.
all take turns. I
Yeah.
love that.
Totally.
Um, alright, now we can look
Okay.
and see where we're supposed to shift to next.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe like, do we want to talk about other ways that I think we've already talked about, like trouble coming up in the workplace and like in the
Yeah, I
work
feel like the work thing
experience?
came naturally.
But what about the difference between trouble and consequences?
Okay, was such I mean, I even texted you about it when I looked at our little, like, here's our little bullet points. So for anyone listening, I literally was so this was such a good question for me. It got me thinking so deep about, like, do I because like I said in the beginning of this, I don't see trouble as, like, the law and, like, physical consequences. I see it as, like, psychological. So when I thought about the trouble versus the consequences, that almost helped calm the voice in my head a little bit because it, like, became slightly more synonymous for me, where now I'm not thinking about it like I'm gonna I don't know, like, trouble always felt so big and bad and, like, nobody wants like, I was a good kid, I don't wanna get in trouble. So it's like, I hate that feeling. Consequences allows it to be a little more neutral and less, like, I'm no longer predicting that it's a bad consequence. It's just there are consequences for all actions, good or bad, and you can't always predict. But so now I kinda see that is, like, my difference in it is, like, trouble is bad no matter what. So my mindset before was if I share, something bad is going to happen one way or another. Now I'm trying to, like, lean into the consequences and see it more as, like, when you share, there will be, like, response or, whatever consequences of the word, but, like, that just, like, broke me in the best way. When I looked at that last night, I was like, "Oh my god, that's, like, what I needed to unlock the next level of this, like, healing." So that's me now. It's consequences is very neutral, and that is not as scary. That is like, I can handle consequences. I can't handle trouble is kind of what my brain has been telling me.
Yeah,
So,
I love
yeah,
that.
curious
I
if that was your like, similar for you or if, like how do you
Yeah.
define those 2 words in your brain?
Yeah, I think about it in a really similar way. I think the only thing I think you kind of said it. The only thing I would add is like for me, with everything that happens, every decision that I make, there are consequences, and usually there are positive consequences and negative consequences at the exact same time. And so there's nothing that I can do to prevent there being consequences, but showing up in the world and like putting yourself out there and, taking actions and doing things, like there's always consequences. And yeah, I think consequences to me definitely has a more neutral connotation. It's not a scary word. And yeah, I don't know. I'm glad that it hit you that way. I didn't think about it that way, for myself in terms of that positive and negative connotation necessarily, but I agree with you. I think it makes it much more palatable.
Yeah. I mean, throughout this whole conversation too, I keep thinking, like, I feel like I used trouble instead of rejection in my brain too, because the psychological consequence that I fear the most is being rejected. Like I mentioned in the beginning, like being ostracized or like shunned by people. You mentioned it too with like your
Yeah.
close knit group. Like you don't want
Yeah.
to, those are the people you're worried about because you don't want to lose them and their support. So I feel like that's how my brain is like trouble is more like the loss or like the
Yeah.
like, yeah, the negative reputation, like, there's just it's so much heavier. Consequences could just be feedback, it could be compliments, it could be applause, like, it could be so positive, and
Yeah.
that almost makes me, like, eager to share because 'cause I'm like, "Ooh, I wonder what the consequence is gonna be," versus before it
Yeah.
was like, everyone at least someone is going to hate you, like, for a
Yeah.
fact, especially
Totally.
on the internet, you can't please everyone, there will be a hater, and that sometimes was enough to be like, "Well, I don't want even one hater, so I'm gonna not.
Huh.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
good."
Yeah. So something you just said there really reminded me of, for me too with my writing, big a big thing that has changed for me just for the last 6 weeks or so. I don't believe anymore that in every situation there is someone that's wrong and someone that's right. I just don't. I have believed that for all 37 years of my life until the last few months. Mm, and that's how I've navigated in the world, and I think that that has made me afraid of things like trouble, because then it become when I'm writing, and I think that makes it really sensitive, specifically for this inner circle of people that I care a lot about and that I interact with, and where a lot of my stories and lived experience comes from, just through in the way I relate to the world. If I'm not gonna get in trouble by writing this, then they're gonna get in trouble if I write this, if we live in a world where someone's always right and someone's always wrong. If that's the world we live in and I share a story, one has to get in trouble. And I don't want my words to make anyone else look bad or get in trouble. And I certainly don't want my words to make me look bad or get in trouble. And so that as a writer has left me in a position where I'm like, well, what do I do then? Like, I
Yeah.
can't even write then because I don't know whatever. And when I freed myself from this idea, it doesn't mean that right and wrong don't exist, because right and wrong certainly do exist. But it means that I think that I more so think in every situation, there's just different perspectives, and they're both a little right and they're both a little wrong. And it doesn't really matter. It's just, can we relate to one another and find common ground and not have to worry about anyone getting in trouble or being, crucified or whatever it is? Can the consequence just be mutual understanding and common
Yeah.
ground and a path forward? And so that's really opened my eyes a lot and freed me of this trouble concept.
Yeah, I feel like again, I feel like you just tapped into something in me, but I feel like that is one of the roots of this fear for me is like I've always been a pretty like I advocate for myself, I advocate for others. I do speak up a lot despite how much I'm afraid to do so, and I was even more outspoken as a kid. But I feel like often when I did get in trouble, it was because I made someone else look bad with the truth.
Huh.
And that
Yeah. Yeah.
happening enough times to you as a kid and a teenager and all that, you start to internalize like, let me choose my battles. Like, is it worth it to speak out on this knowing that so and so is going to look bad and then so and so is going to come at me? And like, so it became a bigger web in my head that it's easier now to convince myself to choose my battles. And I say that all the time that like I've matured, I choose my battles now because I used to be so confrontational.
Sure.
And now I'm in
Yeah.
my head wondering, like, did I swing too far the other direction and allow myself to hide too much because I didn't want to be seen as that, like, oh my God, she's always like I was always the one. And it's, you get labeled and it gets in your head. And I never considered how, like, other people getting in trouble is also a factor in all of this mess because it's not even always me. I did nothing wrong. I could witness something and be afraid to talk about it because I don't want this guy with the gun to, or whatever it is. Like I don't know what
Yeah.
my consequence is gonna be. That
Yeah.
is so interesting. I'm gonna like. I feel like I'm gonna have a million more stories come up in my brain over the next week now of like times that's happened where I've gotten other people in trouble, either intentionally or unintentionally. Like I joke
Yeah.
all the time, I'll be a snitch. I don't care. We were
Yeah.
ta I think it was road rage. We were talking about road rage the other day, me and Neil, and we were like, "I'll snitch so fast." Like, "What do you mean? I'm not getting in trouble for something."
Huh.
No.
Yeah.
Depending what it is, I'll snitch.
Yeah. I remember last year I wrote a lot last year about experiences that I was having with former leaders, people who we shared similar missions, marketing philosophies, values. But the way that we live out those values in the world is different. And that's not, I used to be very judgmental. I used to think someone's right and someone's wrong. And I used to think, well, Caitlin's way of living out these values is the right way, and their way of living out those values is the wrong way. And that led me into some precarious situations where I was trying to convince the world of, not the world, but the LinkedIn world. You're my world, LinkedIn. Okay, anyway, but whatever. I was trying to convince the people in my community of certain things. And, one of these executives reached out to me and said, like, stop subtweeting me. And I was like, I'm not, like, I'm just trying to share. I'm not, I
Okay,
was
'cause she
not
fits though.
subtweeting. I was not trying to make him or his company look bad. He actually asked me, like, do you care about the team members? And I said, yes, like 1,000,000% yes. If I didn't, I wouldn't be talking about the things that I'm talking about. Like, I think that the things that I talk about impact, and for the better, everyone in the world, unless you're a billionaire named Elon Musk and the likes of him. But everyone else, highly beneficial. And so I, you know, but I can see now looking back that because of the judgmental attitude that I had and the need to say there is one right way and it is this way, that I made situations where I'm sure it did feel like I was trying to get him in trouble and his company in trouble, even though I never named names. And most people listening to this podcast have no idea who I'm talking about and whatever. And that was all intentional because I cared so deeply about not making
Yeah.
him look bad or getting him in trouble. Um, but yeah, so as I think about these things now, I'm like, wow, like, I wasn't, my intention wasn't to get him in trouble, but because of that judgmental attitude, I was causing situations where it seemed like I was. And so, yeah, I think it's just a lot to unpack there for sure.
Yeah, that is so interesting that, like, without even naming names or, like, even probably describing, you just described an incident or a feeling, he saw himself in it, understood his impact, and, like, kinda tattled on himself to you in a way, or, like, I guess in a way that'd be validating to, like, get that DM of, like, "Why are you talking about me?" And it's like, "Didn't even say your name. Curious how you knew it was about you."
Yeah.
Kind of like this is gonna be politically bad, but, like, kind of like that interview the other day with Trump when they read the manifesto and said, "I don't wanna be led by a rapist anymore," and he said, "I'm not a rapist," and she's like, "Oh, you thought it was about you?" 'Cause nobody said your fucking name, so it's crazy that you just assumed,
Yeah.
like,
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. It's
on a
exactly
smaller
it's
scale.
exactly like that. And I think, I was talking with my community on LinkedIn yesterday too, and we were talking about, like, sometimes people see big gaps in my writing. And it's interesting because those gaps are lived experience. And if people have experienced the situation that I'm talking about, whether from one side or the other, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And they think I'm saying way too much. But everybody else is like, you're saying too little. Like, I don't know what you mean.
Yeah.
Like, if you said more, I might better know what you mean. And so, yeah,
It's
I
like,
think
this
it's
is not
it's
meant for
really
you
interesting
then.
there.
Yeah, it's almost like, not necessarily speaking in code, but it's like, those who are meant to get the message.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
else needs it, like,
Yeah, totally. I don't
so
need to give all the
interesting.
details and all the defining clues. That's not what it's about. It's
Yeah.
about using my experience to help other people who've experienced it one way or another feel held and have a container to explore it.
Yeah.
And think about it differently. So,
And the
anyways.
consequence is some people don't know what you're talking about, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's right.
You're not in trouble.
Exactly. I love it.
Man,
Okay, well,
alright, well,
this
we
was
are nearing the end of our episode, so is there any other final thoughts or questions that we need to address before we wrap it up? I feel like all cheating and looking at our outline.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's funny because when we first started talking about this podcast, we talked about trouble, and getting in trouble in this theme. And I love how differently we talk about it today than we did back then. And I think that just shows how much learning. I can tell you've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and I know I have too. And so it's just fascinating to see how we continue to evolve and grow. I love it.
Yeah. No, I I might overshare in a second, so apologies. But I I definitely spent the whole month of April diving into this limiting belief a lot. I've unpacked it a lot. I got back into therapy yesterday because since doing all this, I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm ready to like dive into some of the things that I had been avoiding in the past. And so I was talking to my new therapist yesterday in our long intake session. We're going to do EMDR. And she was explaining to me how like when you before you start EMDR, there's kind of like pre-work that needs to be done to like regulate yourself to a certain degree because otherwise like you're just not ready for that like treatment. And I was talking about this book and all the things, and she's like, "Oh, okay, so you did the pre-work." We were like joking about how like unintentionally, because as she was describing like basically EMDR, I don't understand the whole technicality with like the movement and like I haven't done it yet, so I don't fully grasp it, but it's essentially unpacking a story, tying it to those memories, and then attaching the new story. It's just like something with like the eye movements like helps that process. And I was like, oh, so exactly what I've been doing. I've been doing step one of that by myself like for
Good
the
for
past
you.
month. And it was incredible how kismet that felt of like this is all just falling in line for me. So like clearly this is what I am meant to be unpacking right now and diving into because it's all just lining up so perfectly. It's like weird.
That's awesome. Well,
Like,
thank you
so weird.
again for the great questions today and the great conversation. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. And I'm looking
Yay, me
forward to doing it
too.
again next week.
Thanks for listening to Honestly Though with Maggie and Kate. We're being so honest about the fact that we really want you to join the conversation.
Drop us a comment, email us a question, or submit a conversation starter for a future episode. You can find out how down in the show notes. See you next week.